There are 4 kinds of self-care that I like to talk about. All right, so there are definitely more than 4 kinds of self-care, but there are 4 types of self-care. Well, I don't know, are there definitely? I say that as if I know. There are 4 types of self-care that I have identified that are particularly significant for women and will make big impact on your life when you are certain to prioritize them. If the word witch makes you feel full of power and excitement, if you love personal development but loathe boring love and light conversation, if a sexy combo of witchery and inner work piques your interest, you're in the right place. Welcome home, Magic Maker, and welcome to Expedition to Soul, the podcast brought to you by the Sisters Enchanted. On today's episode of the podcast, I'm going to share with you the 4 types of self-care that I think all women need to be prioritizing in their life, and really all people. But we focus here at the Sisters Enchanted on the experience of being a woman in the modern world that we live in. And we're here to help people like yourself who feel a little bit like you've always been a little bit different, a little bit into this stuff, and you're ready to take the magic and the practical and bring it together to embrace your fullest authenticity in this lifetime. So, specifically looking at this experience and self care, what are the 4 types? Well, I'll tell you real quick. They are, you don't need to wait any longer. They are spiritual, physical, practical, and relational. These are the 4 types of self care that I think everybody should be focusing on in their life. So a quick overview of them. That's what I'm going to give you today. Quick overview of them. All right, let's get into it. Well, actually, why do you need to do these 4 types? Because when we think about self-care, we can very easily fall into escapism. And what is escapism? That is doing things that feel like self-care that are really just avoidance for what you're dealing with in life. So I see this show up as going shopping, drinking half a bottle of wine, watching Netflix for 4 hours, scrolling your phone for 3 hours, laying in bed for 45 minutes in the morning and reading the latest bad news instead of getting up and doing the things you want to do before you have to go to work or take care of people or like take the dog out or whatever it is you have to do in the morning. We will say, well, that's for self-care. And I would contend that that is mostly escapism and avoidance of one's life. And when we are prioritizing different kinds of self-care, that's when our life actually becomes this foundation and support for a life that is cared for and nurtured and supported. And we don't have to do the escapism things. We don't feel compelled to escape our own lives by wasting away hours and hours and hours in front of the television or scrolling your phone or like drinking excessively or like eating a whole carton of ice cream that makes you feel bad in your stomach and your gut and you're sluggish the whole next day. Right. When we're prioritizing these 4 types of self-care, everything else in life starts to fall into place eventually. It's not nothing's a magic pill, nothing happens overnight, but eventually things start to fall into place. So these 4 types of self-care. Spiritual, that's one of the 4 types. And this is really, it's multifaceted, as is most things in life. But spiritual self-care, we're talking about your connectedness, your feeling supported by something outside of yourself. So for whatever that is for you, we have people here of a variety of different religious backgrounds, and I'm not here to tell you what yours should be or what that looks like for you. That's for you to know. But really the essence of that is trusting, being able to trust in something outside of yourself, feeling connected. And this actually helps your mental health because it helps to relieve the load you have on yourself to be the only one carrying your burdens. When you can look to the sky or the trees or put your hands in the dirt, or if there is a higher power you believe in, whatever that is, when you can release to that, that takes a load off of your mental energy and out of your emotional body and off of your heart and allows you to just breathe a little bit. So spiritual self-care, how are you caring for that spiritual energy in your life? Practical self-care. This looks like money, health matters, That can also be part of physical, but when we're talking practical, like making sure you're getting in those well visits at your doctor, your dental checkups, all of those things. But money, making sure your where you live is taken care of, your vehicle, like all the practical stuff that we want to avoid because it feels hard and it feels vulnerable and like somebody's going to see us for who we really are. Know that we don't do the thing we're supposed to be doing. So practical self-care is the one that folks will avoid with all of these escapism types of self-care. And in practical self-care, we are really I talked about creating that foundation, and that's where we're really doing that work is creating a foundation. If you think about the times in your life where everything feels hard, it feels harder when you've not done that practical self-care. So if you become sick and have to leave work and you've not taken care of your finances, that feels harder. If you have, somebody else in your life, I have aging grandparents. One of them gets sick and injured or something, and I have not put into place, the things I need to put into place to be able to take the time to help them. Or if I never took care of my car, now my car won't start. Um, all of these sorts of things. When life gets hard, if we've not done the practical self-care, those hard bits feel harder. So the practical self-care, that is what makes the inevitable, like, chaos storm that comes in life for all of us at some point in time, maybe several times over throughout our lives because we have human lives and we live a lot of years. The practical self-care is what makes all of that feel less overwhelming because it's one less thing we have to worry about. Your physical self-care, now let's not confuse that with things like trying to look a certain way and lose weight and be prettier so that, society says you're worthy. That's not what I mean. Physical self care can be meditation if it helps you to calm your energetic body. Physical self care can be movement. For me, hiking, exercising is a critical part of my self care routine and being a person who is, that I'm not terrible to be around because I've taken care of my body and moved out pent up energy. So that's critical for my physical self care. That could be those physical, the doctor's appointments, the well visits, as I mentioned before. But when we're doing physical self care, it really is about being in your body. And this is important because so many of us avoid our bodies because we don't like something about them. But your body is always giving you cues. And when we are doing like self care that's really escapism, or we are using like alcohol or food to care for ourselves and feel better, or like placate our emotions or something, we become more disconnected from what our body is telling us. And it's really interesting because over the years, I am a person, I do drink alcohol. I'll drink like wine or a margarita or a beer or something, whatever. I'll drink it. But I drink significantly less over the years. And often just like maybe one day of a week where I'll consume alcohol. And the things about my body that I notice now are wild. Like I can feel when I start to feel anxiousness in my chest, I can almost guarantee you that I have anemia and my iron levels, I don't absorb it or something. It just will not, they will not crank up. And I can feel anxiousness in my chest when they're like very low again. And I never would have noticed that if I was just feeling like if I was drinking every day or if I was eating food every day that made me feel sluggish and sick and I was having GI issues, right? So, physical self care, when we start to really pay attention to our bodies, we can start to sense when something's not right for us, not just in our physical ailments, but also doing those gut checks around like, what feels right for me right now? Is this a yes or is it a no? Or is it a no, but my ego is telling me it's a yes? And so I'm diving into something that's really not the thing I should be diving into right now. And if you're not connected to your body, your intuition is much harder to listen to. And it's much easier to fake yourself out and say it's intuition or say it's a sign because we weren't connected to our bodies. So physical self-care is pretty critical there. So we've talked about spiritual, practical, physical. The last one is relational self-care. The relational self-care is caring for your relationships. Now, that's self-care, even though it involves other people, because we're centering it on you. So many women feel like they just don't have support of their loved ones, or like they are overdoing for their families and not getting in return, or that they do more than their coworkers, or they're not acknowledged at work, or like this shows up in every area of life. So relational self-care is about learning how you are in relation to other people and what needs to be nurtured. Uh, for example, in my life, I have 2 kids. They both have neurodivergences, and or they are neurodivergent, and they have differences, and it's very easy to get frustrated with them. But it's just who they are. It's just their personality. So that relational self-care looks like understanding, what do I need in order to be the mom they need, and then tend to that relationship in a way that is loving and abundant and, you know, just positive for both of us. And so we look back at ourselves first, and then how we can be in relationship with other people to take away that feeling of being for everybody, doing for everybody, and then getting what we need in return also. But we focus it on ourselves, not changing other people. And that's that relational self-care bit. So when we're doing these 4 pieces of self-care in our lives, and we're really prioritizing them and we're focused on them, then this is when we start to see real change in our lives, and we feel more cared for. Like the self-care, it feels like less of an urgent matter, and it feels like something you say less, like, "Oh, I really need to carve out time for self-care." Well, why is that? Because your life is built to support you, and the hard things don't feel as hard. And in that way, your whole life becomes this beautiful sacred space wherein you're able to navigate whatever comes your way, with ease, and be resilient, and with grace and confidence, because you have put these conscious elements of self-care into place. All right, so those are the 4 areas of self-care. You can do a quick run through, like think, are you doing those in your life? Where could you use some support? We are kicking off our magical self-care challenge again soon. It's a challenge and course and coaching videos and resources and digital books all rolled into one. It's an amazing package. Check that out if this sounds like you could use this in your life. We've had several hundred people, I think like 600 people join us in the last few months for the challenge, and we would love to have you. So check it out. You'll find the link in all of the links places. And yeah, but for now, just go through relational, physical, spiritual, and practical. Are you doing those in your life? What's your weak spot? And how can you strengthen it? All right, y'all. Thanks for hanging out with me. And until next time, I hope that you have an enchanted rest of your day ahead. If the word witch makes you feel full of power and excitement, if you love personal development but loathe boring love and light conversation, if a sexy combo of witchery and inner work piques your interest, you're in the right place. Welcome home, Magic Maker, and welcome to Expedition to Soul, the podcast brought to you by the Sisters Enchanted.